Hello and welcome to another evening of our news updates of what's coming to the patches. What the patches are bringing to our actual servers, because Europe is always a bit behind than the Russians, and so we're getting patches a bit later on. Now we're gonna update you guys on the patches that are coming to European servers. We right now have currently patch 76.1. and we're gonna get up all the patches up to patch 82 as announced by our community manager Dragdish. So we're gonna go over the changes here and inform you all about what's gonna change. So we're gonna start with patch update 0.78 here, as you can see. First of all, they have fixed a bug of which that the Techno Magic Serpent, it's a mount that was obtainable from the Prophetic Arts Hunt for Antiques, could not move in water. So apparently he couldn't move in water. It's about this mount that you can see here. Now that's fixed. So congratulations guys, whoever was stuck on riding the serpent over water, now that is a possible thing again. And something they fixed in Umoir, the vintage page quest. So the letters from the cook no longer arrives for characters that are below level 85. I'm assuming that this is about the quest line where you had to get those letters in Umoir to get that achievement there. Then about classes, Bard is getting a really big, amazing buff, you guys. So about March's disability, that's applying to everybody, all the enemies and all the enemies. That's reaching quite a lot, and it both damages and heals. Obviously, it damages the enemies and heals the allies. Now they've removed the guaranteed crit damage chance it can do. Now, many people might think this is sad, but just hold on for the buffs that are coming. The cooldown is always 25 seconds, no matter the rank. It used to be 24, then 16, then 8 seconds. So that's kind of a big nerf. It's always going to be 25 seconds cooldown, which is quite long. But the cast time now is always 1 second. Before it used to be 1.6, 1.3, and 1. So it's always 1 second now, even on rank 1. And the damage dealt has been increased by 250%. That's a lot. Damage dealt by 250% increased. I think that kind of makes up with the cooldown that it used to be in rank 3, 8 seconds, now it's 25. Let's say 250% from 8 seconds is about 16, and then 20. It's 20 seconds, so it's not quite up to that standard yet. But the damage is still a big boost, so that's alrightish. And then the healing done has been increased by 560%. That is a lot. That is definitely going towards the direction of support, Bard supporting, where healing is gonna be coming from the Bard a lot. Where maybe you might even be able to run Astral and Heroics, basically PvE content with a tank without the healer. So you have a Bard support, because this is clearly becoming the aim of having a Bard support in your party while rushing with 2 engineered DPSs, because we all know by now that engineered DPS is really good to have in your party setup. So when you run with full Bard supports to replace that engineer support role, the healing might replace the actual healer role, so you can have another DPS guy in your slot, in your 6-man slot, instead of having that healer just bang behind you, pressing Dark Green roll all the time, because we all know you do that. Then Speech of Denial is an ability that used to make you immune to magical effects, which is like fear mostly, fear and disorientation. Now it makes you immune to debuffs such as wounds, vulnerability, weakness, and cowardice. So these are now debuffs. These are no longer CCs like it used to be crowd control basically. Now they remove, or they make you immune against debuffs, which also is a pretty good thing. It's just a different mindset. Search of Courage is the ability that we use on supports to pop the anti-CC for 5 seconds. Apparently there was a bug that made it so that there's a less cooldown on the skill. They fixed that, so that's kind of a nerf, but it's justified, because every other support has also 1.5 minutes cooldown on every defensive support ability, be it Courage, Temporal Acceleration, and Bloodlust. Then a really huge buff to the Bards is that the Barrier ability now ignores the global cooldown and also no longer activates the global cooldown. This is an amazing boost for supporting Bard, whether it be for PvE or PvP. You can react as fast as you possibly can now from now on Of course, if you aren't casting anything, if you aren't channeling any ability, such as Ghost Shield, but even then, if you do Ghost Shield, you won't feel the need to do Barrier at the same time. But there it is now, finally. Bard is no more getting clunky or slow as it always has been. It's finally getting off that global cooldown with the Barrier. Big buff. And that also goes for the Shadow Veil. So Shield of Shadows, finally also off the global cooldown. So whenever you really need that defense buff, need to protect that one person, it finally goes off global cooldown. It should have been already for so long. Now it's finally is. So that's a really good thing. Then a ruby called Recitative. I think it's this ruby that I found. It now increases damage done by March by 10 to 20 or 30% depending on rank 1, rank 2, rank 3. And previously it was a way more. So that's a quite nerf. That's a big nerf for the ruby at least. But it no longer affects the cooldown because they already buffed the cooldown up or nerfed in this case. They nerfed the cooldown already to 25. And to like compensate the nerf in the ruby, sorry, here, they also increase it by 2.5 times. So I think they're gonna compensate it there a bit. I believe it's not too bad there. Now Horn of Victory now increases the amount of health healed by March, which is another ruby, by 10, 20 or 30 depending rank 1, 2 or 3 instead of 30, 50, 60. So that's also a nerf. But then again, considering the amount of healing they actually buffed by base value, I think it still weighs out by a whole lot. So it's definitely not a bad thing. Like, it's always bad to nerf, but it still outweighs the actual change. So don't worry about the healing part. Now, Wall of Shields is the one, is the ruby that applies, that was supposed to apply defense effect on all the other people. Sorry, not defense. Was supposed to apply the actual shadow shield on everybody in the team that you were using this on. Now before it was only using on your target, and was it. Even if you had the rubies and your aspect active, it still didn't work. They finally fixed that, and it's going to all the additional targets depending on rank 1, 2 or 3 rubies you have for the shadow shield. Then the last ruby that changes healing music. The amount of health healed is reduced by 2, so that's a big nerf. But the number of triggers is also increased by 2 times. Now I'm assuming here, because this is kind of a weird translation from Google, that this is about the March effect, so that the healing has been reduced by 50%, but the number of triggers is also increased by 2 times. I'm assuming this is the number of people it actually hits, so it's going for double the amount of people that it can heal. So it's more like rate based. That's what I'm assuming. Don't quote me on that, don't beat me to death if I misinform you. I'm only trying to do well. Next ability from the Engineer Sanatorium. This is the healing turret that we used to play with. The amount of health healed by the Sanatorium no longer calculated as a percentage of the target's health level. So whoever the turret is healing no longer is based on the percentage of his health. So it's going to be a fixed value, I suppose. I believe this is a nerf as well. Always better to have percentage. Then the ruby from the Psy called Extermination. Now Agony applied to additional targets. So this is happening when you do Blade Wall and then you do Agony on top of the Blade Wall. Then all the targets that are near the Blade Wall are gonna get Agony as well, but at a lesser duration. Now deals only 40% of the base damage, which is a lot of nerf. So that's a nerf for PvE, and I don't know if people really use it for PvP. I mean, I suppose people use it for PvP, but it was never the focus of doing this in PvP, because you obviously are going to focus on one person. But this is a nerf. It's quite sad, because Agony used to be really a huge damage over time for the Psy, so that's a Ripperino. Next for Summoner, another ruby called Ritual of Pain. I suppose it's these rubies here at the bottom. Now requires the presence of an active aspect of support or attack. So it now requires aspects. I'm not sure why anyone would use this on healer, because I'm supposing it doesn't have healer aspects. So same for Ritual of Plague, no more healers. Okay. Destruction Ruby also, no more healers. And then you have this Grim Ruby, Also, no more healers. Okay, so I guess they're really streamlining the classes, at least for Summoner that is, on how it's getting to play, or how it's going to be played. Then for Scouts, the Ruby technique of survival. The amount of healing received is no longer increased due to additional effects and characteristics. So the healing the Scout could get from this Ruby no longer is affected by additional effects. I'm supposing like double heal from Bloodthirst and other things that I can't think of right now, and characteristics. So like survivability, I'm assuming, is no longer affecting the healing effectiveness of that ability. I mean Ruby. And then for the priests, you have the Ruby called Thunderer. It now requires aspect of support or aspect of attack. I'm assuming Thunderer, I have no idea what Thunderer is actually, but you can't use it anymore if you are on healing aspects. So that might be a bummer for you if that was what you were using. And then the same goes for complete cleansing, now requires aspect of support or attack. So also healers are being ruled out. And then Scorching Light, same thing, only aspect of support or attack, no more healers. So I think they really streamlined the priest and the summoner with the same ID. Druid's kind of left out here because Druid is the third and last class that is able to heal, but it doesn't seem to be affected by any of this, so I'm not sure what the idea is behind this. And then the rarity shop, they fix a bug to which extended exchanges of rarities, blah 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 blah. This is no relevance for us because I'm supposing this is only for the Russian server where they could get these chests, but that's about it. And then the last thing, they finally fixed the unicycle key, which is the new coolest mount that I really love. Seeing it's like the round bike you can see here right now. You couldn't auction it, you could only auction the fragments of it, but you couldn't auction the mount for whatever reason that was. They finally fixed that now, so now you can go in and make that big bad money from selling the unicycle key. That's everything for patch 78. We're gonna move on to patch 82 now. So this is the patch that we're getting. This is the last patch we're getting for this update for tomorrow, Wednesday, 20 January. For size, again, a different change. The Ruby called Free Edged Blade. I'm assuming that is this one. Now the effect of wounds is applied only to the target of the Mystic, so basically the target of the Psy, so basically your target, at the time of the use of the ability Ghost Killer. Now Ghost Killer is what I believe to be Assassin's copy or Assassin's Ghost or something. I don't know the name right now, but I'm showing you on the screen what it is. And so this is a buff because it used to only apply whenever your Ghost Killer in this context is actually hitting the target. But now it's actually applying wounds when you cast it on the target, which is better because sometimes your enemy used to outrun your Ghost Killer and so on, and that would be it. But then the negative part about this is that it only applies wounds one time upon cast, and not anymore every time your assassins re-attacks your target. So actually I'm gonna change my answer. This is a nerf. It would be better to have your Ghost Killer run after your target for about 10 seconds. With every chance he attacks the target, he applies the wounds. Now you only apply wounds upon cast. So I'm not really seeing the purposes of having this Ghost Killer here anymore related to this Ruby. I'm not sure what they're trying to do with this. Then for Scout, there's the Ruby Among the Shadows. This one no longer increases the damage done by the ability Assassination. We all know what that is. But this ability now applies the bleed effect on the target, dealing damage over time for 15 seconds. That's 15 seconds damage over time. And this is equal to 40% damage from rank 3 of Assassination, I suppose. So that's kind of a nerf. They kind of took a lot of damage from the initial base damage and they put 40% of that into a dot that takes another 15 seconds before it applies the full 40%. That's a nerf as well, you guys. That's a lot of nerfs they're bringing to Scouts. Poor Scouts. And then the Druid, the class that no one plays anymore. No one knows what Druid is anymore these days. King of the Beast, that used to be a really good ability. The duration of applied effects has been increased. Immobilization, aka Snare, from 0.75 to 2 seconds, so that's really good. Vulnerability and wounds from 3 to 4 seconds, so that's really good too. But now they are applied only by the first hit of the pet on the target. That is really bad. It used to apply these debuffs and the snare every single time the pet was attacking the target. Now it's only doing upon the first hit, and then no more. So that's the same thing that they did here with the Precise Ghost Killer. It only applies the thing, in this case wounds, when you cast the ability, and then no more. So that's a nerf on both of these aspects, on these areas, and I think that's really sad. I think that was a cool mechanic to have, and now they kind of ruined it, but it is what it is. Then for Heroic Astral, they adjusted the damage done by enemies. I have no idea if they nerfed it or they buffed it. I'm assuming they nerfed some allods and they boosted some other allods. I suppose that's why they put adjusted. All in all, I think it's just gone easier because that's what I've seen from playing on RU. Improved the visual component of abilities. No idea what that means, but it is what it is. And then fixed a number of other issues. This is pure laziness by the developers that they just did other stuff and they didn't bother to list them. But this is all we got to see. Right, so and then onwards to some other news. Other news is that our beloved guild on EU free to play, which was called Minc. You heard it right. Monsters Inc. is merging with Ascendancy. You've heard it right. They're merging their guilds. The idea is that they're merging because they kind of feel like League is growing too strong. League is outgrowing Empire, and Empire can no longer keep up with the demand of power competition. So Empire has decided to clap the hands into each other and form one big strong guild. And Minc is merging into Ascendancy. And then I've also got the news that a guild called Distinguished, which is a really old guild as well, is going to move to Minc for the benefit, I suppose, of the extra tabards, the guild level, the rubies, and all that stuff. So that's a big one because Minc has always been a big boy, has been the leading guild on a lot of terrain, if not any terrain, if not every terrain in the game. Until Ascendancy came into the picture when they merged the servers, and that's been really good competition. But it seems like people have been dropping off quite a lot. I've also seen famous names disappear on the free-to-play servers, which are still really sad about it. But yeah, it is what it is. So Minc is merging to Ascendancy. It's a big change. We're curious of what it's gonna bring to the gameplay in free-to-play. I'm actually curious to follow that up. And that's about it, really. That's all the news I could bring to you. So I hope you guys learned something new again today. I was your host, and I'll be glad to bring you the next news on the next time I get to do this again. See you guys on the next one. Have a good one and good night.